Hello class, welcome back. So today what we're going to focus on is a little bit more of microeconomic topics. We're going to go over a little bit more of cost curves. We're going to talk about economies of scale. So this is going to be the first part of this video. The second part of the video is going to be applying this to our newest chapter, so firms in a perfectly competitive market, and how this all ties together. So what we're first going to do is go through some slides, and we're going to talk about how we draw these curves and what these curves essentially mean. So as of right now, you should be able to calculate total cost, fixed cost, variable cost, and graph them. So if I were to just give you these numbers, you should be able to graph these different these numbers to make a curve. Now, I'm never going to ask you to graph fixed cost, variable cost, or total cost, but you will need these in future exams, assignments throughout this class. So we're going to understand the relationship between marginal cost and average cost. So it's really important to know what marginal cost is, what marginal revenue is, total cost, variable cost, all the different costs that we've already looked at. So this first slide, what we're going to do is we have our cost. Total cost equals fixed plus variable. So when we're producing 0 units, our fixed cost here is 100, so that's constant throughout the problem. So again, fixed cost is fixed. It's not changing over time. It could potentially change over time, but in the short run, it is fixed. This is something that you have to pay no matter what. So we would plot our curve as a horizontal line at 100. Again, it's not changing. Now our variable cost, this is going to be something that varies. So here on our graph, we have it going from 0 all the way to 520. So as we produce more and more, our variable cost increases. Again, it's a cost that varies because either we're hiring more people, using more tools, more materials, whatever it may be. So if we were to plot this, it would look something like this. Now total cost is just a sum of both of these curves. So at 0 units, we produce, or our total cost is 100, because again, we still have to pay these fixed costs no matter what, even if we don't produce anything. And as we produce more and more and more, our total cost is increasing. So if we plot this curve as well, you'll see an increase. Now marginal cost, you should know the formula by now. It's a change in total cost divided by a change in quantity. So here we have our total cost, we have our quantity. The difference between our quantities is just 1. The difference between our total cost varies. So our first marginal cost is 70, 50, 40, 50, 70, 100, and 140. So what we notice is as we first start producing products, or the quantity, as quantity increases, our marginal cost actually decreases. So as marginal cost, so usually marginal cost rises as quantity rises due to diminishing marginal product. So again, diminishing marginal product essentially is as we produce more and more, there's only so much benefit you can derive from this, or so much profit. Now here, it falls before it rises because let's just say we produce 1 unit. We have this whole factory and we're only producing 1 product. These costs are high. But as we start producing more and more, we start to see that this cost is spread out between these products and you can cover your costs. Now you start to see it increase even more. Now we're saying per product that we produce, so every additional product that we produce, our cost is increasing by that much more. Now if we wanted to limit our cost, in this example, we would only produce 2 or 3 units of this product. So if we were to graph this, it would look something like this. This is our marginal cost curve. This is something you will need to know how to graph and understand what it means in terms of graphical analysis. Now, average fixed cost, again, it's the formula for this you guys should know by now. It's fixed cost divided by quantity. And as you see, as we produce more and more and more, you see our average fixed cost decrease. Again, we're spreading this cost out between our different products. So this is how our average fixed cost curve looks. Average variable cost is variable cost divided by Q. Here we see it rise and then it fall, as quantity rises, our variable cost may fall initially. In most cases, the average variable cost will rise as output increases. Again, it's going to get to a point where you're going to start producing more and more. This cost is increasing. So if we just think about producing more units, we have to hire more workers, use more material, whatever it may be. So there is going to be a point where your average variable cost increases again. So again, if you were just given numbers, you should be able to see, okay, it's high, it's decreasing, and then it's increasing again. So this is how it would be graphed. Now, average total cost, again, the formula for this is total cost divided by Q. Also, it can be average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Now you would just fill this out, and again, you would plot this. So if I were to say the most important curves to know is marginal cost, average total cost, and average variable cost. All right, so average total cost is usually a U-shaped curve, and we'll talk about efficiency, where we want to maximize how much we want to produce, and this is where all this ties in profit maximization, especially for our different market structures that we'll look at later on. So this is how it would be drawn. Now, something important to know. So as quantity rises initially, our falling average fixed cost pulls our ATC down. Again, there's two parts of ATC. Average total cost consists of average fixed cost and average variable cost. And we already saw originally that our average fixed cost is decreasing when we first start producing because we're spreading the cost among the different units that we're producing. Now, you get to a point at this point right here, this is where we minimize our cost. You always want to minimize your cost. Now, anything past this point, your AVC is increasing because, again, as we produce more, there's more costs that vary. This is going to increase our average total cost. So at this peak, at 5 units, this is where our cost is the lowest. So this is how much we should produce. Now this is how we minimize our cost. All right, so here we have our average total cost curve. We're going to plot all of them together. Average variable cost curve, average fixed cost curve, and then our marginal cost. So in most of our examples, what I'm going to have posted is just your marginal cost, your average total cost, and your average variable cost. We don't really look at our average fixed cost until later on. So those are the ones you will need to know. So here we have our marginal cost and we have our average total cost. Now, where they intersect is a very, very, very important point. Now, wherever they intersect, this is showing your lowest cost possible. So taking everything into account, your lowest cost possible, that's how many units you should produce. So where they intersect at this point right here, that's where you want to produce. Anything above this, and we'll talk about what it means, anything below this, we'll see what it means as well. So when marginal cost is less than average total cost, ATC is falling. So again, you see this portion right here underneath the average total cost curve. This portion right here, this is the marginal cost curve, is underneath your average total cost. ATC is falling. Now on this right hand side, your marginal cost is above your ATC. This is showing that your average total cost is rising. Now this is important when we look at profit maximization. So where marginal cost crosses the ATC curve, at the minimum of the ATC curve, that's where you're going to want to produce. So wherever this unit is, that's how much we should produce. And we'll see what that unit, why it's so important later on when we add all of our curves with our different market structures. All right, so in the short run, some inputs are fixed. So factories, land, rent, you have to pay these. So again, fixed costs. In the long run, all inputs are variable. So basically, let's just say your firm's not doing too well, you're not turning a profit, you might want to downsize. Or if your firm's doing really, really well, in the long run, you might want to expand business, open up more factories, or sell existing ones, whatever you want to do based on your long run. So long run, everything's much more variable. Short run, it's much more fixed. So in the long run, ATC at any quantity is cost per unit using the most efficient mix of inputs for that quantity. So now we're going to look at 3 different factory sizes. So LRATC stands for long run average total cost curve. So we're going to have 3 types of firms or 3 factories, small, medium, large. So our average total cost for our small firm is here. So again, it's small, so we're producing less units. So again, imagine the origin being 0, this Q out here is being infinity, we're producing less. And as you can guess, when we have a medium firm or a factory, we're going to be able to produce more. And a large factory, we're going to produce even more. So again, their costs vary because of their size. A small factory is going to have lower cost per unit, medium cost per unit, large cost per unit. Now, this is important to know so you know if you want to downsize, if you want to produce more, if you want to produce less, based on how much your quantity is and your total cost. So in the long run, these firms can change. So if you're a small firm, you could change to a large firm in the long run. If you're a medium firm in the or short run and you want to downsize, you could shift to a smaller factory. So these are all applicable in terms of your total cost. So to produce less than QA, a firm is going to choose size small in the long run. So if you only want to produce from this portion to this portion, so from this portion to this portion, you only want to produce, you would want to be a smaller factory. Now, if you wanted to produce from quantity A to B, you would want to be a medium firm. And if you wanted to produce much more, you would want to be a large firm. So again, this is choosing your short run or your size of your factory based on your different costs. So if you want to produce much more, you want to be a larger firm. If you want to produce less, you want to be a smaller firm. Now, if we look at all of these curves combined, the outermost portion of these curves, this is what comprises of your long run average total cost. So this is really important to know. Now, we have so many different types of firms around the world. Not everyone has the same cost structure. Not everyone uses the same process. Not everyone uses the same tools, hire the same workers, use some machinery, whatever it may be. Everyone has a different cost. So all these average total cost curves belong to different firms. Now, as you look on the outside, it creates this large U-shaped curve. This is our long run average total cost. So it's really important to know different aspects of this. So here on our graph, we have our average total cost, and then we have our quantity. So with this, we'll see what happens as we produce more. So what's happening to our cost as we produce more and more, and eventually when we reach our capacity, is it good or is it bad? So our first term that you need to know, and it's really important in economics, is economies of scale. So what this is saying is as we produce more and more, our quantity is reducing. So this is really good. You want your cost to decrease as you produce more. You're being efficient. So here, if we're at the origin, we're producing nothing, but as we produce more and more, you see our average total cost decrease. So if you're in this side of the long run average total cost curve, this is good. You want this. Now here, this is called constant returns to scale. So this is where average total cost stays the same as quantity increases. So still, this is good because your costs aren't increasing, but they're not decreasing as well. So it's good to be here as well. Now, the last one is probably the worst. This is diseconomies of scale. This is basically saying as we produce more and more, our costs are increasing by a lot. Now, you never want to have this, and we'll talk about why in a couple of slides, but this is bad. So we have economies of scale, constant returns of scale, and diseconomies of scale. Diseconomies meaning as you produce more, your costs are increasing by a lot. Economies of scale, as you produce more, costs decrease. Constant returns of scale, your average total cost stays the same as you produce more and more. So economies of scale, long run average total cost falls as quantity of output increases. So let's just say we're increasing our worker specialization. We have different tasks for different workers. We might have machinery to help reduce our costs as well. So this is more common when our quantity is low. So if we're not producing at a large scale, our average total cost can be much lower. Constant returns of scale is your long run average total cost curve stays the same as quantity of input increases. So we kind of talked about this already. Diseconomies of scale, as you produce more, your costs are increasing. So this is an increasing coordination problem in large organizations. So this might just be saying that your company is growing so much that you have no handle over it. So management becomes stretched. So let's just say you have a factory of 5,000 people and you just have one manager overlooking it. You can't control the cost. You can't look at every single process and be okay, we need to reduce costs here, here, and here. It's just not efficient. So again, you're growing so fast, you're producing so much that you can't control these costs. You can't maintain this profitability, and this is much more common when the quantity is much, much higher. So again, these are all important things about the cost curves. In part two, we're going to look at graphing these. We'll use whiteboard. We'll have some practice problems, and we'll talk about perfectly competitive firms. So stay tuned for that, and I will talk to you guys soon.